Hello, I'm Sonia Chung, and here is our second episode of Music Lovers. I'm joined by the lovely Tom Jolliffe. Hello, Tom.
Hi Sonia, how are you?
I'm okay, but it's really hard to not go into film lovers mode because that's the main thing we do, and we do more of
Yeah,
that. I'm kind of so used to doing the normal intro to that, and I just go into automatic mode. Does that make sense?
it does. I was wondering if you might slip up and say film lovers instead, but you did well. You did very well.
Thank you. But I was deliberately trying not to sort of follow the same formula and saying, "Hello, my name's Sonny Chung. Welcome to Film Lovers." So I thought I have to try and make it a bit more different. So there you go. All right then. So this is the second episode of Music Lovers, and we're going to have a bit of a theme, aren't we? What are we going to do? Work experience boy. I call him the work experience boy, guys, because on Film Lovers he comes on a lot, and once or twice he's had to fill in for me to help me out every now and then if I'm sick or whatever reason. So
Yeah,
Tom's the work experience boy. So what are we gonna do, Tom?
we're going to do some of our favourite albums.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
And what we'll do is we'll take it in turns. This is usually how we do Film Lovers, isn't it? If we do like a special
yeah,
themed, so we bounce back and forth. So you do one, and then we can talk about it, and I do one, and we can talk about it. So you're the guest. So why didn't you take it away with your first? We don't have a top 10 or anything, do we? We're just going to bounce back and forth.
no, I've just made a really, really long list, so we
Me
could be
too.
here all day.
Well, we can. Well, what we can do is pick the favourite ones, and I'll do that, and then we can do like an honourable mentions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we'll try have to minimise it, so we're not here for ages. All right, then take it away, work experience boy. So, what's your first choice of favourite albums?
I'm going to say Purple Rain by Prince as my first choice.
Awesome. Why Purple
Yeah,
Rain?
uh, I just love the album. It's one of those. It wasn't so much because of the film. I do love the film though, but I just love the album. Um, Pretty much every track, and I think it's his most consistent album. I think because he did tend to experiment every now and again or do something that was a really kind of off kilter.
Mm.
So sometimes there'd be a track and you think, well, I love you, Prince, but that's maybe not doing it for me. But Purple Rain I think there's 8 or 9 songs in it, and they're all kind of perfect. And then the title track is one of my favourite songs ever.
Yeah, that's just an amazing song, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I
kind
mean,
of
it was
just
really.
this mix of kind of ballad, and it's a bit gospely as well,
Mm.
and kind of rocky. Yeah, no, it's a really great album, and obviously Prince is kind of known for being a musical genius.
He was very talented. People don't realise that he actually did a lot of. He used to write quite a lot of songs for other artists. Like he wrote Chaka Khan's is it I Feel For You, or was it was one of her
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, that one.
Um,
Then Nothing Compares to You, he wrote as well for
yeah,
Sinead O'Connor.
well that was originally his song. He did
Yeah,
one, he did it, and it's a lot more um well hers is a lot more ballady. His is ballady as well. Which for him was quite unusual at the time because he was so used to being kind of up tempo, like what's it? What's the one with the hats? Oh, God, I can't even remember.
yeah, Raspberry
Uh,
Beret.
well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you. It's old brain kicking in, and it's very hot today. It's heat wave here, so we're all sweating away. Um, yeah, and like in Kiss, where they're all kind of up tempo-y ones. Whereas his "Nothing Compares to You" is a lot different to when she covered it, and apparently
yeah.
he hated what she did with the song. Um, I think they literally fought with each other over it. But yeah, that was actually his song, and then she covered it, and he wasn't very happy apparently for doing that. But yeah, he. I wonder what other songs he wrote for other artists because I'm sure he did quite a lot of like.
Manic Monday.
Oh, did he do
I
that song?
he did, yeah, for the Bangles, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise.
It's
Do
quite
you know
funny
what?
when you listen to the song, like some of the rhythms, they've obviously toned it down, but you can kind of hear Prince and his lyric style in it when you kind of listen to it.
Yeah,
Um,
because
yeah, he
kind
did
of
quite a
hard.
few though.
Yeah, you can kind of imagine what he would have done if he did actually sing that song. Do you know what I mean? I think it would
Yeah,
have been a bit more uppy, a bit more like Raspberry Parade kind of thing.
yeah, there'd have
Whereas,
been a little bit more funk in it, I think.
yeah, yeah. So I forgot he did that one because I remember after he passed away, they did like a special Top of the Pops episode where they
Yeah.
basically played all his music, and and I like the interesting facts they wrote underneath. Like they wrote ones like, he wrote for da, da, da. I forgot he did that. Do you know any other songs that he wrote for other artists?
Not off the top of my head, but I mean, he did do quite a few. I
Yeah.
mean, he even covered a few himself,
Did he?
mostly kind of like when he did live performances. But he just loved music, and I think also what I've really liked about his stuff is the live performances as well. Like
Mm.
he was one who was kind of unrivaled.
You saw him live, didn't you? My
I,
my
I
mum and
never I never saw him live, unfortunately, but I've seen a few of the like concert videos and things like that.
yeah, my mum and stepdad did, and they said he was absolutely amazing. Just breathtaking, amazing. So he was a born musician. Do you know what I mean? Which
Yeah, I
is
mean, just pure. He could pick up almost any instrument and play it.
what do you
Um,
want? I wonder how many instruments he played. Do you know?
well, there was a famous story about one producer. I think it was Quincy Jones back in the day.
Mm.
Someone he was like quite a famous music producer. And he did a lot with the Jacksons and things like that.
Yeah,
Um, and he was invited into a studio to look at this young kid who was just recording his first album, and it
yeah.
was Prince. And what Prince was doing, he was recording the entire album by himself. So he'd go down, he'd do a track on the drums, record it, he'd come out, and then he'd go back in and do one on the bass, and then one on the guitar, then one on the keyboards as well, and then he'd do the lyrics and do the singing. So this guy was like, "Oh man, this guy is going to be good."
Yeah, well, he's more than good.
Yeah, and
All
he
right.
kind of plays around with other things as well.
Yeah,
He just
yeah.
used to live and breathe music completely, and then
Um,
he'd produce everything himself as well.
well,
So
yeah.
he'd be the one mixing everything and doing all
Hmm.
the production.
Do you remember we said in the pilot episode that we're sort of trying to find our feet that he was very he made sure that whoever he worked with had the rights to their own work. Because remember I told you that Pink went to him.
Yeah,
Um, he'd worked with her, and he'd said he'd only worked with her if she had the master copies of her own songs.
yeah,
And she didn't say yes. He turned her away, which she got kind of offended and upset, a bit pissed off. But then, like as time went on, she kind of realized actually she really respected him for doing that. Um,
yeah. Because I mean,
yeah,
it got to a point where he just had so many problems with major labels.
did he
So
really?
that's it. Yeah.
Is
So I mean,
that
that's
why?
why he went off to by himself essentially and became a producer.
Oh, I didn't realize. And then
Yeah,
remember there was a point in the 90s where he just became the sign.
it was pretty much that. That was what triggered
Was
it.
that
Yeah,
it? Okay.
yeah. When he became Symbol. Yeah,
So, and it was all like the artist formerly known as Prince. So was that like beginning of all that stuff that was happening then, that he was having all those issues with record
yeah.
labels?
And that's kind of the point at which he went from going with major labels to more, I guess, indie labels where he had more control.
Hmm. And his music changed then, didn't it? It was getting more riskier, I think. Like, like songs like Cream and You Sexy
Yeah, I
Mother.
mean, he always had that, I think, but yeah, he did. He just did whatever he wanted to do. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But no, he was amazing. So Purple Rain is one of your favorite albums.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that, or shall we move on to one of
No,
mine?
we can move on to your first choice.
So some of these are kind of like my favorites, and then other ones are kind of they're probably a bit like you, where they're kind of a mix of the albums I listened to when I was growing up and kind of stayed in, my catalogue of memories. So one of them would have to be Jeff Buckley's Grace album. Did you ever listen to that album?
I don't think I have. I mean, I've listened to like a few tracks here and there, Jeff Buckley, but not. I don't think I've ever sat down and listened to a whole album.
No, I first listened to that album when I was 25, and I think it was because my mum and my stepdad had the CD, and I used to listen to it. And it was kind of, I mean, it kind of blew my mind away because he was very alternative music, wasn't he? You couldn't put him
Yeah,
with anyone else. There was no one else like him, really. Um, so, and that whole album is just like poetry in motion. Like, if you listen to the lyrics, you can tell that he writes he writes that he wrote his lyrics like poems, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah,
So I think what he did was where some artists write the music first and then do the lyrics afterwards. I think he must have written the lyrics first and then the music afterwards. Um, I'm not sure about that, so I won't. Don't quote me on it. but I'm. That's how I feel. That from the sense of the album. And then I became really obsessed with that album. Like, I listened to it religiously for God knows how long, and that was all I ever seemed to listen to. And every now and then I'll sort of go back to it, and I'm not as fond as I was at that time. I think because I was 25, and when you're kind of in your 20s, you're like trying to find yourself. I think it was a bit
yeah,
like that, and I was kind of starting to write a lot more. That was the beginning of my writing phase, so I think that kind of influenced me a bit and inspired me a bit to be a bit dreamy, I guess, because his music is kind of dreamy, especially on that album. There's songs like Mojo Pin and
yeah,
so many great ones, but you can tell some are kind of like they feel like they're on a bit of a trip. Does that make sense?
yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah,
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 a bit of it sort of, a high kind of thing. Some of the songs are kind of, yeah, or they're very dreamy, like is that. So yeah, it's really interesting melodies that he put together. And I mean, my favorite song on that track would have to be So Real. Do you know that song?
no, I don't
That's
know off the top of my head. No.
Yeah. But I mean, the one that everyone knows on that track, and I get so. Oh, I'm going to tell you this, Tom. I get so annoyed when other people cover it because people cover it again and again and again, and I just don't want them to cover it. Is Hallelujah, because originally that was
Yeah,
Leonard Cohen's song, wasn't it? And then he did it, and then after that, it was just a succession of artists covering it, and it's just like I hate it. I really, really hate it when other
I think
artists
there
do
was
it.
a string of years, wasn't there, on the X Factor where everyone just seemed to do
Oh,
it.
and I just hated it. What was her name? I like her too. KD Lang did a cover, but actually her cover's quite good because it's very different
Yeah,
as well.
because she's quite unique, so you can imagine she
Oh,
did something a bit different with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
like him. But then all the other artists, they're just sort of like singing it, but there's just like no feeling or no emotion in it, and I'm just like, just shut up. And I just hate it when people sing it live. Just don't do it. It really upsets. It really bothers me. And then the Shrek came out, and then it was that. Remember the Shrek film that
yeah,
was on the album? I think that was. Oh, actually, that was Rufus Wainwright. I like him as well. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of when it started. It was just like a load of them. But the only one I think it should have stayed at is Jeff Buckley's version, and then it should have just stayed there. Do you know what I mean? Because he made it his own,
yeah.
and
One cover is enough, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, it gets a bit tiresome afterwards. So Grace album always sort of has a bit of a soft spot in me because that was probably my most favorite album of my mid-20s. Whereas before I was kind of, I didn't really have one. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was kind of like the beginning of of finding myself. But yeah, it felt like a sort of a bit of a, not a revolution, a revolutionary kind of thing. But like when Matthew McConaughey came back to Hollywood and they called it the McConaissance. So it was like, yeah, it's kind of like the birth,
the Renaissance.
Yeah, Renaissance. That's it. so yeah, Grace album always has a soft spot in me. But I'm surprised you never listened to that album all the way through, because it's a really good album to listen all the way through, actually, especially if you're writing.
Check it out.
Yeah, it's very good for writing too, like because you write films, etc. And painting too, because that sort of sets you in the mood. So yeah, it's very kind of inspirational as well. So, but definitely his Grace album for sure. All right, well, let's move on to one of your choices.
Okay, I'm gonna say Led Zeppelin 4 by guess who?
Led Zeppelin. Is it Led Zeppelin?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so their fourth album is probably my favourite. That's the one with Stairway to Heaven in. So, the one everyone kind of, the most iconic one, I guess. But this was like the first album I kind of fully listened to all the way through. When I used to learn guitar, my guitar teacher had a cassette tape and he let me borrow it. So I kind of listened to it. That was on the times where you had to switch your tape round to listen to the second side of the album.
The old days.
Yeah, the old days, like four tracks on each side.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so I kind of wore the tape out and never gave it back to him. But no, it's just an iconic album, and I think it's their most kind of flawless album all the way through. I mean, again, like a little bit like they were so kind of diverse in what they did. So they did, like heavy rock. They did a lot of blues. They did sort of folky songs and a little bit of like psychedelic rock as well. So sometimes there would be tracks where they've gone really off on a tangent. Maybe they've smoked too much or something.
I think so.
Yeah, but I mean, Led Zeppelin 4 has a really good kind of arc and it's got a good variety. And there's a great song in there called Going to California, which is kind of this folky song, and there's a mandolin playing in it as well. I mean, I used to love that song so much, I even went ahead and bought a mandolin.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah,
you don't have to
I did. The problem was, it wasn't that good. It was probably a little bit cheap, and I kind of broke it a little bit and never got around to fixing it. And somewhere like 2 or 3 moves ago, I lost the mandolin, so that just went.
Yeah.
But no, that is my favorite album, and obviously I love Stairway to Heaven as well. And then the last track on the album is this really great song that it's a little bit underrated because it's, I think, more of an album track rather than one of their most iconic singles.
Yeah.
There's this song called When the Levee Breaks, which has got this really great kind of drum pattern and bass that's kind of really kind of driving, and then just a really kind of hard rock bluesy song. And it's a really great way to kind of finish an album.
I mean, they were very, they definitely had their own style going on, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely. So you got the classic kind of rock and roll songs on it, Stairway to Heaven, which is this kind of folky ballady thing, another folk song, and then there's a kind of folky, rocky, slightly psychedelic song called Battle of Evermore, and it's got kind of lyrics in there inspired by Lord of the Rings. And that's another kind of quirky track that's one of their better of that kind of type, where they're kind of clearly experimenting. So I mean, that's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah. All right then. Anything else you want to say about
Uh, no, no, I think it's just one that everyone should really listen to. I mean, it's 8 tracks, so it's quite short, but it's just
that?
really kind of impactful.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um. Right. So should we go on to one of mine?
Yep, you can do.
So on my list, I have REM's "Automatic for the People" album. Did you ever listen to that album? Or have
I
it?
might have done a while ago, but I can't sort of picture which album is which.
It had a funny. Let me look it up. The cover.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably know um, based on what songs are on
Songs
it.
on it. There's
Yeah,
so many good songs on that album, though. It was one that my mum had, and she played it again, a cassette. It was in the 90s. And we played it a lot in the car. But there's just
yeah,
so many good songs in it. There's Drive, where it's that video where it's all black and white, and he's basically crowd surfing. Does that ring a bell to you?
yeah. That one rings a bell. Yeah,
Yeah, that was one of the songs on that album. Man on the Moon. Was Man on the Moon? I think that was on that one. Hang on, let me look it up. Drive. Oh no, Automatic. I'm gonna look it up on the computer just to make sure I don't give everyone the
yeah,
Automatic for the People. All right, hang on. I'll go through all the album. So the album cover I'm looking at was basically kind of like it was in black and white. It was like a weird star shaped thing with the initials REM in the middle. And let's look up what songs it had. So the first album is Drive. The second one was Everybody Hurts.
yeah,
They released both of those as singles. Monty Got a Raw Deal. Try Not to Breathe. New Orleans Instrumental. Ignore Lamps. The Side, Winter Sleeps Tonight, Sweet as Follows, Stormy Kitten, Man on the Moon. Yeah, I was right. That is on that album. Night Swimming and Find the River. So the singles they released from that album and went into the charts was Drive, Everybody Hurts, and Night Swimming. I mean, everyone remembers Drive and Everybody Hurts. Those singles were played
yes.
so much on like
And then I
MTV.
think Man on the Moon kind of got connected with the Jim Carrey film, didn't it?
Yeah, the
About Andy Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if that film. Oh, it came out much later, didn't it?
yeah.
But
It
they
was a few
did
years
that
later,
song.
but then the
Yeah,
song kind of got connected with it.
yeah. And do you know the song "Night Swimming"? He did that live on Jules Holland, playing the piano live. Um, and he's just as good, you know, in person as a recording artist. So, he's a genuinely talented musician as well. Because remember, we said that some musicians aren't actually very good live, but they're better at recording. Does that make sense? Or some are
Yeah,
better. So you can be a good recording artist, you can sound good recording wise, but live wise, I mean, I won't mention any names, but there are some singers that aren't that good live.
yeah,
But then you get ones that are actually just as good live. Do you know what I mean? And you can tell that they are what they are. For instance, so that proved his worth. But yeah, REM was the album that my mum played a lot in the car. And famously, that was the album Kurt Cobain listened to before he killed himself.
uh, they're not known for being kind of upbeat, are they? REM. So,
No, no, with those
yeah,
songs are
but I mean,
kind of,
yeah,
especially Drive. I mean, you listen to Drive; it is a good song, but I think it was Drive. Sorry, I stand corrected. I think it was actually Drive that he listened to before he killed himself. And you listen to that song, and you can kind of see why. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of see if he's in that. I mean, it's really awful what happened to him. But you can kind of see if you're in that frame of mind, that wouldn't be the best
yeah.
song to listen.
And it might be that he was listening to a lot of songs of a similar kind of ilk at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, that song's quite dark as well. I like it, and I love the video, but there's only so much I can hear of it. It's a bit like when we sing in the pilot episode, Joy Davidson's "Love Will Tear Us Apart," because that's not a good song, really. I mean, it is a good song, but it's not a positive song. That's what I mean. It's a song when he was in a very bad place, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
I mean, ironically, it sounds like their most upbeat song
I know
because of
because it's
the musician kind of style in the track and the way
yeah,
it's put together. But yeah.
but you listen to the lyrics. And he was not in a good place at the time. I think he just broke up with his wife, so he was really suicidal. So that's another sort of very dark song that if they hadn't put the up tempo music in it, then you would kind of see that actually it's a lot darker as well. So
Yeah.
but I think Automatic for the People just has a sort of it stood out from the rest of their other albums, if that makes sense. I don't know why, like it just felt a bit more poignant, that album, I guess. Maybe
I
he
think
was
so,
trying.
yeah. I mean, they've got a lot of good songs on that album. I think Everybody Hurts is one. That's probably one of my favourite of their tracks.
Well, that one was
Um,
on TV all the time when I was in
yeah,
Hong Kong, because I was in Hong Kong twice. Remember I told you the second time, that was like 92, 93. That was always on it. I just remember that video of him being stuck on the highway while all these cars are stuck. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's a very good video and a very good song. But yeah, it's a different album, that's for sure. All right, let's go on to one of yours.
Okay, I'm gonna go for U2, Joshua
Mm.
Tree.
Oh, I
Um,
had that as a teenager as well. When did you have
yeah,
it?
um, that's probably I've listened to it loads of times, I think, but more recently I kind of bought it again on CD. Yes, I mean this was my probably by far my favorite album from U2. I
Hmm.
think obviously like the mid-90s onwards when Bono was getting a bit more of a reputation, they started to become a little bit more kind of uncool. And
What was his
then kind sorry?
what was his reputation?
That he was just a little bit sort of arrogant and also
Oh,
he was
yeah.
very kind of I mean he's always been politically minded, but
Hmm.
I think, it got to a point sometimes people didn't like him using his platform to kind of put his too much of his politics over and
Oh,
kind of
okay.
forget. Yeah. So yeah, and then obviously Bono also got kind of renowned for being a bit full of himself as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I kind of lost interest in them towards the beginning of the century. I think their songs started to become a bit overproduced,
Hmm.
whereas there was a bit of a simplicity about how they put their songs together. They'd have, four instruments. The Edge would have a little bit of kind of, reverb on his guitar, his kind of famous sound. They might put, one or two more layers on top of that. But I think when they started doing things like Beautiful Day and all those kind of albums, they kind of produced a lot more. So there was a lot more layers in the tracks. They had certain kind of dancey elements almost in some of the way they put their songs together.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like Joshua Tree, that's probably my favorite album of theirs, and that's the kind of where I think they peaked, because they still had a bit of rawness there, and they still had a bit of edge. Edge isn't not edge, not just the
Yeah.
guitarist. Yeah, they had a bit of edge, but I think he was always a big part of the sound as well. The Edge with his playing. And his kind of riffs and everything, the distinct sounds that he kind of created with his pedals and things like that. So he got a bit lost when they started having a lot more kind of studio production and everything was getting louder and bigger. His kind of part of it got drowned out a little bit, I think.
Hmm.
Whereas he's very much more a prominent sound in their earlier work. But
Yeah.
yeah, Joshua Tree has With or Without You, Where the Streets Have No Name.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like it's got some of their most iconic singles, but it's got some really great album tracks as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it almost feels like stripped back in comparison to their newer stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to quote. I'm going to quote a friend of mine quickly though. Just
Go on then.
you two were playing live couple of years ago, and he was quite interested in going.
Hmm.
Um, he says, I like you too, but I'm only really interested in their older stuff.
Oh,
So
really?
I'd love to go if they just play Joshua Tree, but if they
Huh?
start playing Beautiful Day, I'm going to punch myself in the dick.
You know what's funny is that The Edge has an amazing voice. I mean, there's a YouTube video you can look it up. You know the song "Love Is Blind." I don't know what album that's on of theirs, but Bono sings it. Bono sings it,
Yeah,
but he actually wrote it, and it was while he was in the process of divorcing his ex-wife, his wife. So he was like absolutely heartbroken. Um, and on YouTube, I think I shared it once. You can see him playing it live, acoustically, just him singing, and he's got an incredible voice. And I think what happened was because he only does 2 or 3 chords on the guitar,
yeah,
so these 2 or 3 chords, and I think it was because a few of them had broke. So it's quite interesting, but the song's just it's absolutely amazing. And I actually prefer his voice to Bono's in that song.
yeah.
So
That's interesting. I'll have to
yeah,
give that a look. Yeah, I didn't
yeah,
quite realise he had that good voice. But I
he's got an
mean,
amazing voice. I
yeah,
mean, he could definitely go solo, but there was an interview with all of them, and they said there's no boss in U2. We're all the bosses. So they all have their part to say, but you can definitely imagine that, say for instance, if the Edge went solo and left the band, you could definitely tell a big change and a distinction in the music all three of them would make. Does that make sense?
yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah,
And the melodies that they do all together, etc., because they harmonize really well together. Um, so yeah, but yeah, the Edge surprised me. He's got an incredible voice. To be honest, I actually kind of prefer it more to Bono's. But I mean, he has done quite a lot of stuff, hasn't he? Singing by himself on there. He did Numb, but that was a very kind of robotic voice, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, I think that's in part what I don't like so much studio production on their kind of later albums.
Yeah,
It's I guess it's keeping up with trends, and a lot of albums became like that.
I think that was the 90s as well, because I remember that video being shown
Yeah.
a lot. So yeah. Oh, interesting. All right. Anything else you want to say about Joshua Tree?
Uh, no, I think it's a really good album. It's quite a good driving album as well. So I
Hmm.
usually have it out in my car if I'm listen to it while I'm driving.
I think I bought it. I bought it because it was like around the early 90s, and that's when Friends started. And it was like the
Yeah,
second season when they were always playing that song because Ross and Rachel were kind of like trying to get together and, not getting together. And it was a lot of sulking and crying in the corner on her behalf and playing that song. So I was like, oh, I really love that song. So I went out and bought the album. But to be honest, I only really liked probably 1 or 2 tracks on that whole album. So yeah, it is interesting how modern culture sort of influences your taste as well. Does that make sense? Pop culture, for
yeah. I
instance.
think sometimes you'll hear a song on a movie and then you'll go and look it up on YouTube,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
you'll see all the comments, and it'll be, "Oh, this movie brought me here," or
Mm,
this TV show.
yeah.
Well, it's like Kate Bush with the Stranger Things recently.
Well, that
Um,
what song is it that's into the charts after God knows how many years?
yeah, Running Up That Hill.
Yeah, it's come out again because of that TV show.
Yeah, it is. I think it's shot almost. Was it? It might have gone to number one actually.
It
Yeah,
did. It went to number
yeah,
one again. It came out in the 80s, so it was number one in the. I mean, that's a really good song as well. But yeah,
yeah,
for sure. All right then. Should we go on to one of mine?
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we can go. We can go on to one of yours.
Oh, okay, you vanished for a
Yeah.
little bit there. All right. You might hate me because while you were talking about U2's and their later stuff, so you didn't like it, there is one album that you probably hate, but I actually really like it. It's U2's pop album. And I tell you why, because my dad had that album in his apartment in Hong Kong. Um, and when I first listened to it, I was kind of like, yeah, it's very different to their older stuff. It was definitely sort of influenced by. I mean, the first song was, I don't know what's the first song. There's one where they talk about cosmetic surgery and all that sort of stuff. I think that's probably the kind of stuff you don't like when they're all beginning to be a
Yeah.
bit more. I know, not political. It wasn't political, but they were being a bit more kind of what's the word?
I guess a bit of like social commentary as well, and commentary on
Yeah,
the industry.
yeah, exactly. So it was a lot about, you know, one of the lyrics is "Fat girl watches skinny girl in a magazine." Da, 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 da. So it's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's social, yeah, commentary. So, but there are some really good songs on there. Actually, I mean, there's some kind of like very, you know, sort of different to their older stuff, for sure. Very much a 90s kind of vibe to it. So you could tell they were changing or trying to change and go with the times, if that makes sense. But there's some really good songs on there, like If You Wear That Velvet Dress, and that's very much a kind of ballad and very kind of soft. Whereas their other stuff on that album is very kind of bit techno, if that makes sense. And
that does make sense.
upbeat. Yeah, there's a very much kind of sort of a bit of a not a techno, but you know what I mean. There's sort of techno vibe going on there, and yeah, it's different. I don't know how to explain how it's different.
Well, I guess you know, like a bit more of an electronic sound, more kind of
yeah,
studio.
Yeah, for sure, definitely more of an electronic sound, like I can't remember all the songs on it, but yeah, I just remember listening to that album quite a lot. When I was about 27, I think, something like that, 26, 27, I think. Maybe I was younger. I can't remember, 24, 25, I can't remember, but it was definitely in my 20s. But yeah, I like that album, but then I can understand why you wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some of the album tracks might be more interesting than some of the singles, so I might have to give it a listen.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I can understand because some of the songs I found kind of hard to listen to, and I think it's because, like you say, that's when they were getting a bit more. It wasn't political, but it was definitely a lot more about social issues at the time. You know, it was all about, you know, this fascination with the media and how they portray women's bodies and all that kind of stuff. You know, that was kind of coming into place, and you know, eating disorders were happening as a result of that, etc., etc. So it was kind of more about them commentating on social, you know, aspects at the time, and also that was when all this fascination with cosmetic surgery was starting to go up, even in not so much celebrities, but just normal people. You know, that they felt that they had to do that in order to kind of blend in, I guess.
Yeah, it became almost a high street thing, didn't it? So
yeah, I mean, now it's everywhere. You could get Botox anywhere and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So, I mean, I found it interesting and kind of revolutionary, but I can understand why you wouldn't like it. All right, then let's go into one of yours.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to say Fugees, The Score.
Oh, I love that album. I had it when I was a teenager. That was a huge album, wasn't it? When it
was massive, yeah.
Yeah, and I had it. Why the Fugees? Was that the name of their album as well? Oh, that was The Score, sorry.
Yeah, The Score, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was basically their one and only kind of they've done a kind of a few half albums, or after they kind of split up. I think they kind of the studio released a few kind of half albums and B-sides and things like that, but they kind of did one album, which was the score, and that was like 95 or something, where you had Ready or Not, and then you had Killing Me Softly.
But that was a song that kicked it all off, wasn't it? Because that was a song that everyone listened to first time in the charts. So that was the one that got everyone kind of, because it went to #1, didn't it?
I think it did, yeah. So like, from that year, just you heard their stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think, like everyone, I kind of got the album and listened to it, and I thought it was really good. It's never been my favourite genre of music, but I think what they did was there was a bit of a mix of influences in it. So they had a couple of R&B tracks, a bit of hip hop. They had kind of a lot of commentary in their tracks as well that kind of had a bit of meaning and kind of told a story about what their kind of their upbringing is like over where they're growing up.
But they're from Haiti, weren't they? Because they speak French, and you can hear them speaking French in some commentary on the album. So they're speaking French in a very strong accent. Haiti. How do you say Haitian?
Yeah.
Haitian accent?
Haitian, I think, yeah.
Haitian, yeah.
But there was just a good mix of personalities within the group. And then obviously you've got Lauryn Hill, who's just a really kind of amazing vocalist as well. Not just a vocalist, but she was a really great rapper as well.
Yeah.
And, their lyrics always had a bit of meaning to them.
Do you know why they did that?
I'm not too sure the reasoning, but I'm assuming that, she was probably getting a lot of attention, and she probably wanted to do things a little bit more her own way.
I heard it was because her and Wyclef had an affair.
I mean, it could be that, yeah. I know.
I think they were having an affair at the time, so I think that would make sense why they would. And I think it was a bit of, like you said, like creative differences, and she was getting more of the attention because she was more of the lead. But I think that's kind of explain why. Do you know what I mean? It'd be awkward, isn't it? If,
I guess it could be. Yeah,
I think
I think
they were having an affair.
He came back though, and he did it was him or the other guy did a track on her album. So her solo album, and she's still only done the one solo album.
I wonder what the other name was, because I never knew what it was. I just know her and Mike.
I can never remember his name.
I know, I feel bad. Look it up, because we should mention it.
Yeah. But I mean, the score is such a great album, and like I said, there's a bit of a mix. They've got a Bob Marley cover on there as well, so there's a little bit of reggae. You got the old kind of ballad, "Killing Me Softly," because obviously that's a cover as well. But I loved that album, and I loved the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill as well.
Yeah,
so they're two that kind of vie for me as my favourite kind of Lauryn Hill album, if you like. But I mean, she's not done an album since.
No, it's a shame. I think she still does a lot of stuff, like maybe producing and stuff, but she's got
yeah, she does a bit, and then she does a few it's Pras.
Yeah, I've just seen that as well. I was going to say that. Made my mind.
I think my first experience with Lauryn Hill though was in Sister Act 2.
She's so
that's
good.
Where I first,
she's so good in that film.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that she quit. Part of it was down to kind of wanting to spend time with her family. She had a family to raise, so that was a part of her thinking. But it surprised me that she's never kind of come back to do a follow-up album, or to kind of, or even to like act again. But she does it every now and again. She appears and does performances. But it would be nice for her to go back in the studio and kind of do another album, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd really like to hear another album of hers. There's a video on YouTube where Nicki Minaj meets her, and she's basically just kind of a bit like Wayne's World, when they go,
Yeah.
"We're not worthy, we're not worthy." She's
Yeah.
absolutely kind of, she's you get these videos where celebrities, meet their heroes and they're exactly the same as us, so they kind of lose it in a way. So yeah, it's Nicki Minaj kind of basically doing on the floor going, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, I love you," kind of thing. A bit of an embarrassing Wayne's World, we're not worthy, we're not worthy kind of thing. But, yeah, no, she's incredible. I just wish they did more stuff together.
Yeah. I do remember hearing that. I think that she's really not keen on performing. She
Mm,
finds it quite difficult performing live. I mean, she's really
yeah,
good. She's like phenomenal, but just in
stage.
terms of like nerves and things, and she doesn't like all the attention. So I mean, that could be part of why they're thinking of why she's kind of like semi-retired, basically.
And taken a step back from the limelight.
Yeah,
Yeah. What was your favourite song on that album? Mine was Ooh La La La. That one. Is it Fujila?
yeah.
Na, na, na,
I think my favourite was
la, la, la.
probably "Ready or Not,"
Oh yeah,
which sampled an Enya song, which
yeah.
I
And didn't
think
they?
is quite a random thing to do. But yeah, I really like that song.
They got sued for that. I think they got taken to court because I don't think they had
Yeah,
her.
I think it was like the early days of like people sampling. So the whole copyright issue, people were almost unaware. I think back
Oh
then.
really? I
Yeah,
think that was yeah, that was a court case between them because I don't think she'd given them permission to use that sample.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think you're right. I think that's when that sort of started happening and all this copyright business started, coming into place. So yeah, but no, that's a really good song as well. So for sure. Anything else you want to say about that album?
No, I think that's really great album.
Yeah, sure, definitely. All right then. Let's go on to one of mine. I'm gonna hate myself if I don't say this, and it's kind of going over into film lovers territory, but it's technically still a soundtrack. So we said we can do that, didn't we? Prior to
Yeah,
recording. So we can do soundtracks too, can't we, to films because they're still albums. So I've written the Train Spotting soundtrack.
yeah, that's a great soundtrack.
It is a good soundtrack.
Yeah,
I'm eating, so I tell you what. Why don't you take away and explain why that's a good album? I'm having my lunch at the same time, so I'm gonna let you explain why that's such a good album. I mean, that's just like a mix of Britpop, isn't it? And that's
yeah.
when.
It's kind of like there is a bit of an interesting mix. I mean, it's very much of the time as well. And
Hmm.
there's a few older songs like they've got an Iggy Pop song on there, Underworld, which I think Danny Boyle had an Underworld song in. Did he have one in The Beach as well? But yeah, I think it's a really good soundtrack. I'm just looking
Yeah,
through
that
now. You got
famous.
a couple of Iggy Pops,
Yeah.
Primal Screamer in there, Joy Division are in there, Atmosphere. That's one of my favourites of Joy Division songs.
Blur.
Um, yeah, Underworld Born Slippy is probably the most famous song.
Oh God, do you know what? I used to like. All I remember that song is Lager, Lager, Lager. Is it so every
I
time I
just
hear
remember
that,
that year, the year it came out. I think
it's
either the
always on.
song or Train Spotting or from both, that you just heard that song everywhere on adverts
Lager,
as well.
Lager, Lager. As it go, bad boy, sipping on angels, he wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just come away. It's like it's a bit like do you remember what are the name? You sung No Limit, Too Unlimited. It
Oh,
was like
1992. That was the bane of my existence that year.
it was a bit like all you ever came from was like from that album was the no 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 no.
Yeah.
There's no lyrics. That's what it used to be called.
Yeah, that used to be on my playground as well.
That's it. But yeah, that Born Slippy song was, I think, the most famous from the Trainspotting album.
Yeah. It's also got Golden Years by David Bowie, and you can't beat having a bit of Bowie in your
No.
album.
And what's the famous one by Lou Reed, Tom?
Uh, it doesn't have it listed here, but I can't think of it.
Is it not on the album? Perfect Day.
It's not listed on the album, but I do remember it in the film. Yeah.
Is it not on? Oh well, maybe he didn't give them permission to use
Yeah,
it.
it could be. Yeah.
Because I remember talking to someone about that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll use songs in a film because they're given permission, but when it actually comes out on the soundtrack, they don't actually include it in. So it gets quite not political, but you know what I mean. They get quite
Yeah. It's almost like because it's another kind of form of revenue you could be making on someone's song.
Yeah, exactly, and
yeah,
it's from one of their own albums. So essentially, they're kind of competing with themselves, really. So, which kind of makes sense. But then he did really good because he released that song and it went to #1. And do you know what? My mum, and I've said this before, me and my mum, I mean, we all love that song. But then when you listen to the lyrics and you take the lyrics aside, what's it about, Tom? Do you know what it's about?
I can't think of what it's about. But it's probably something quite dark, isn't it?
Well, it's basically about being on heroin and taking heroin. So you know, day is being high on heroin. So which is why it fits that film so well in the moment they use it because they're all heroin.
It makes it a little bit odd though when you think of the. Do you remember that cover version with all different artists? Why they chose that?
Yeah, they're so and there's like Heather Small, and there's like they're not the opera singer. There's Boyzo. Yeah, and then at the end.
And that was meant to be quite sort of upbeat as well, wasn't it? That kind of cover.
Yeah, but you know, at the end, there's him because he sings a little bit of it as well. And then at the end, he famously puts up his finger to his mouth to say "shh." Do you remember that bit?
I do. Yeah, I remember the video.
And the reason why that is because that song he wrote it was about being on heroin.
I think maybe you know the producer who decided to do the cover, maybe they didn't really appreciate the lyrics or listen to it, you know, deep enough.
Maybe that was kind of his way of saying shh, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, didn't say anything.
And I remember, was it Ronald Reagan who famously used to play "Born in the USA" as like an anthem, but it's actually kind of like an anti. It's not exactly a positive, like flag waving film.
That's when you listen to. See, this is what's really interesting about music. Like they have a really positive, like sort of melody to them, and like you said, Ronald Reagan played that as what is it when he was trying to go up for president?
Yeah, either election or re-election, but it was always like on his campaign trails, and you know, very much. Yeah, he used to have like Rambo as a kind of like poster boy for his his campaigns as well.
You know what that song's about? That's about Bruce Springsteen wrote that about how the veterinarians from Vietnam War came back and were treated so appallingly by the government and everyone because they all came back with PTSD. Of course they did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then they kind of got, you know, ignored and shunned.
So it was kind of ironic that Reagan was playing that song as his anthem.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really get the undertone that Springsteen had put in.
Yeah, which is why I think when that cover version came out after Lou Reed's original version, he does that finger to his mouth thing to say shh kind of thing, and that would make sense, wouldn't it? If they don't want to really emphasize that. So they're making it a bit more, because that came out and that released money for charity as well. So you don't want to really bring that to limelight if it's for charity.
No, definitely not.
So, but yeah, there's so many good songs on that album, like Blur Sing, and that's a very dark song, isn't it? It's only like 4 or 5 chords. I remember playing it. I learned it during the lockdown. I bought a keyboard because I was going mad. So I thought, I'll learn the keyboard. And I learned how to play that song. And it's only about 4 or 5 chords, but it's really a dark song. You know, that's I think that's when they're at the like hit their rock bottom and have gone totally cold turkey, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the sort of the very traumatic, tragic side of being a heroin addict. You know, when they're doped up on it, they feel amazing, don't they? They're in another planet, they're in another world, they're taken away from reality, and then boom, they kind of come back. And the sudden horror of horrors, reality's kicked in, and they realize where they are and what they're doing, and what their lives are really like. So, because essentially they're trying to escape themselves, aren't they? Really, and where they're from and what they're doing and all this kind of stuff. It's a hard film to watch, but it's a good film for sure.
yeah, definitely. That soundtrack is almost as iconic as the film.
Definitely.
All right, let's go on to one of your choices.
Okay, so I've just recently kind of dug this out again and put it in my car. So this is my sort of way of choosing these albums, I think. Faith No More, The Real Thing.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of whether this was like their first or second album. It was definitely earlier on in their career, but it's got probably most of their most recognizable hits in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Tell us more about it.
So it's a good album. Faith No More are kind of in the vein of like the Chili Peppers. That kind of mix of genres, really. So, quite hard rock sometimes, very kind of dynamic vocals, hard hitting bass lines. They had this kind of interesting fusion of styles, and I think they were sort of quite similar to early Chili Peppers, and I think they kind of evolved in a similar way as well. It's definitely definitely a classic kind of example of that late 80s, early 90s shift in kind of indie music and alternative rock, as opposed to sort of the hair metal bands and things like that. But I think it's an interesting album because there's quite an interesting range of songs in it, and I think songs like Epic, they're probably their most sort of identifiable songs. That and Falling to Pieces. So it's a really kind of energetic album, perfect for driving, basically, and singing to the point of annoying my daughter as well.
Oh, okay. So it's not just Alanis you do that to.
No. I do it sort of, when there's some, music that's got a bit of energy to it. So, these guys definitely kind of had that as well. Same as when I've got some Chili Peppers on some of their earlier stuff, particularly, yeah. But I think this is a really good album, and then it's around about that time Chili Peppers were doing Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which was another kind of classic album with a similar kind of mix of styles and a good variation in the songs. Yeah. Do you have any particular favourite tracks of the Faith No More?
I have a confession. I don't know who they are.
Well, if you look up The Real Thing and like the first couple of songs, you'll definitely know them when you hear them, and you might know the video if you see the video. But it's one of those you'll kind of
maybe.
Yeah. So from Out of
Recognize
Nowhere,
the
Epic,
tune.
yeah. I definitely recommend. And there's a little bit of a few kind of those similar style bands of the time. But yeah, definitely recommended. Particularly if you like sort of the Chili Peppers and like particularly early Chili Peppers, I think you'll probably like their stuff as well. I've not really kept up with them quite so much over the years.
Are they still going strong then?
I'm pretty sure they're still going. I'm not too sure whether they just do the odd kind of get together every now and again, or whether they're still making kind of regular albums. But they did a few a little bit later in the kind of later 90s into the sort of 2000s, where wasn't quite as good. But I guess like a lot of bands, they start falling apart slightly in terms of what they're doing, or
Mm.
their evolution doesn't always attract, some of the diehard fans, I guess. But I've always liked their earlier stuff compared
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
their newer stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a shame, isn't it, how some bands evolve and they don't sort of, pick up the big audience like they normally did in the past. So it's a tricky one, but at the same time, like, I think it's a brave step if they change genres or try doing different things for sure. So it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think it's just difficult, really, because sometimes you do what you kind of did at the beginning, and then that goes out of fashion maybe, and then you try and evolve, but then you kind of alienate your diehard fans at the same time sometimes.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
different
yeah.
members come in and out, and they bring different dynamics. There's like a lot of like the Chili
And
Peppers have had,
sounds.
you know, 3 or 4 different guitarists, and then you'll get certain fans that say,
The
well, the
Guns N'
band's
Roses have as well.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So Guns N' Roses fans
So
will
there's
say, it's never the same when the Slash isn't there,
no,
or when they had a brief run where Axl wasn't there, and they'll say, it wasn't the same.
no.
Yeah, but any
Yeah,
band that has
it's
lineup changes has that kind of that stuff to deal with, really. But I quite like,
yeah, that's always gonna happen.
yeah. I mean, I quite liked the way the Chili Peppers evolved.
Hmm.
I've kind of liked their more modern stuff as well as the kind of classic stuff, but some bands they kind of lose you a bit, as I kind of said with U2 before.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, it's a tricky one, like we said. Anything else you want to say about Faith No More and
No,
the album?
no, we can move on to
No.
one of yours if you like.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go for Skunk Anansi's Stush album. Did you ever get that album or listen to it?
I probably did, yeah. I've got one of their albums. I can't remember which one I've got, but I do. Yeah, I'm a big fan of
Hmm.
Skunk Anansie.
Yeah, they were really good. It's a shame they split up. I
Yeah,
mean, she does a lot of stuff now,
I think
solo.
they are back, or they did get
Yeah.
back together quite recently, but I don't know whether that went as
Oh, did
far as
they?
new albums and things. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Probably just a brief stint. Um, but I remember that album. The photo cover was like her screaming at the front was with a shaved head because she had shaved hair at the time.
yeah,
And now she's got long hair. I mean, she's gorgeous. Like she's very unique looking, isn't she? But what's her name? Skin
yeah,
is her
yeah.
artist name. And I think one of my sisters saw her live at her university because sometimes they do, concerts at unis and stuff.
Yeah, they never. I don't think they ever did like huge venues. They were that kind of indie band. So I mean, they probably had
Yeah,
they had a period in the mid-90s where they were obviously having more hits, and they were getting kind of more uh, of the regular airwaves, I guess. So they were playing on radio all the time with some of their biggest
yeah.
hits.
I
A
mean,
lot
she was
in
playing. That would have been in sometime in the sort of 2000s. But yeah, it was just Skin alone. That
oh,
was
okay,
more.
yeah, because I think
Um,
they
yeah.
broke up in 2001 and then got back together in
Okay.
2009.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
so
It'd be interesting to hear if their music still sounded the same, or
yeah,
I don't know. I never
I listened to a
heard
couple
it.
of recent songs, and they've still got that kind of recognizable vibe. But I think they were quite good at kind of
Mm.
mixing their styles as well. So some of it was quite, almost
Yeah,
approaching heavy
yeah,
metal, wasn't it? And then some was a bit more chili peppery, and then they'd have
yeah.
ballads. and then
or
sometimes there'd be a
ballads.
bit more, drum and bass and
Yeah.
things. Yeah. So really kind of interesting mix of styles.
Actually,
Uh,
which actually
yeah,
I think is in a way, because we were talking earlier about Faith No More and how some bands all of a sudden change their genres or their sound and it loses the audience. So in a way, I think that's a safer way to play it, because then you can't disappoint your audience. Do you know what I mean? They know they're
yeah.
gonna get a bit of everything, and
I think
they
if they
know
expect that
there's gonna
within
be
an
something for
album, yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and that's quite a clever way to do it. So I like the way that they produced that album. Did you ever listen to Stush album, Tom?
yeah. I think I must have done. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was a big fan, like in the 90s. Well, I still listen to
yeah,
them
they were
quite a
huge,
lot.
weren't
Yeah,
they?
so um, they're
I
one of those
remember.
where you make recommendations that people might not have heard of. So that's another one that I
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
I'll recommend.
definitely. I mean, I have a friend, and he said that once he used to work at a gym years ago as a personal trainer, and they used to play that album sometimes. But the first song,
Yeah,
as soon as because the first song is, um, yes, it's be political. Do you remember that song? And every time they play the album, I think they forgot that the first song was that, so they'd have to go. One of them would have to go running down and
yeah,
sort of skip onto the next song, and then afterwards they were fine. But that was the only kind of explicit song, really. But I love that song. I mean, that's an amazing way to start the album, isn't it?
yeah. They definitely had an edge to them. Yeah,
And that's very much like you said, heavy metal-y. That's full on guitars, electric guitars, and everything. Um, but yeah, they were so different as well. And then I remember there used to be a show on BBC One called The Ozone Layer or something, or The Ozone. I can't remember. It was a
yeah,
music show,
yeah,
and they were talking to a voice coach, and she was saying that actually Skin could go into classical music because she's got a very versatile voice, and you can kind of hear that, can't you? That
yeah,
you can kind of imagine her going into something like um not opera, but you know what I mean, contemporary, classic style, like, which would be interesting because she's got such a good voice. Um, but I guess that's just not her style, really. Do you know what I mean? But maybe you never know. I mean, there have been people that switched later on. I mean, there was the famous Freddie Mercury last song, which was so tragic. Oh no, it was one of his last songs, not the last one.
probably his
Maybe
last
the second
solo
last one.
song, wasn't it? When
Yeah, he
Barcelona.
did not. He didn't. Yeah, so it was the one before that when he was, getting really sick. Barcelona. The other one, the last one, I can't remember what it was. Those were the days of our lives.
Yeah,
That was the last one. But Barcelona was, yeah, basically, unfortunately, he was coming towards the end, and he knew that, so he wanted to just kind of do everything everyone could do. And he loved opera, and he thought, well, I might as well go for it. So he did a duet with a famous operatic singer. I can't remember her name. It's awful, isn't it?
no, no, I can't
But
remember
so
her
so
name either.
no, but she was very famous opera singer. So that was that was basically a big switch from him going from modern music into classical operatic music, and definitely showed that he was more than capable of doing it. Do you know what I mean? So it would be interesting to hear if she can do that, or if she would think about doing that maybe later on in her career, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she
Does
might
that make
consider it.
sense?
Yeah, I think she's definitely got the vocal
Yeah,
range. Yeah,
but definitely, yeah. No, exactly. You've basically hit the nail on the head. So she's just got such a versatile voice. Is there anything else you want to say about Stush? I mean, there's so many good songs on that album. it's hard to pinpoint which one is the best. You know what I mean? Because they're all so eclectic and versatile that they're sort of unique in their own way.
I think that was the one which had their most famous singles on. So songs like Hedonism. No, it's just a really great album, and I think I've got the one they did before that, which is called Paranoid and Sunburn. So I think that's the album I've got here somewhere. Yeah.
Did that do well, or was that the Stush one probably the most lucrative album?
I think it's they were doing well up to that point, but Stush was the one that kind of made them mainstream for like a year or two.
Yeah. Because they were huge as soon as that album came out.
Because it's the kind of band that's not always that mainstream, but that was the one that kind of did it for them for a little bit.
They were everywhere, weren't they? They were on Top of the Pops and on music shows and on MTV and on the radio all the time. So they were huge. But yeah, it would be interesting to see if they get back together and what they came up with. If they decide to get together again.
So that so I mean that's one I listen to quite regularly. Sometimes if I'm out driving or working out, or occasionally when I'm writing.
Working out.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a good one to listen to when you're writing?
It shouldn't be, but it is. Well, for me anyway. But that's probably because I'm strange.
Okay. That's all right. It worked for you.
Yeah. But no, it's definitely worth listening to. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it before, so I'll give it a go for sure. Anything else you want to say about
that? No. I think we can move on to one of yours if you want.
All right. So I think this is one of yours, so it could be both of us together, really. Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation album.
Yeah, I mean, this was one that I rediscovered this recently, and just remembered how good it was.
I remember when I was, how old was I? Probably 11 or 12. I bought that album off one of my friends bought it on tape, and I was obsessed with that album. And that was one of the albums that sort of created those like elaborate music videos, didn't it? Because music videos at that time became like basically films in their own way. And it was directed by her ex-husband, Renee Sobring. And it was such an unusual video, wasn't it? It was, especially the main song and the main dance is just like absolutely iconic. And it's so intricate, that dance as well, the choreography. It took them quite a long while to piece it all together. But actually, that was initially Michael Jackson's idea for his next album, to make it, to do a song where they're all kind of dressed up in kind of military soldier stuff. Because you can kind of see that, can't you, in a video?
Yeah.
When it's shot in black and white. But yeah, I mean, the dancing in that film is amazing, because there's, Fake to the Tracks with the Nation, a Little Black Cat, and the other ones, Miss You Much, The Knowledge. And they're all really interesting songs, because it was kind of like, I guess, her only album where she kind of talks about social issues. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely some of that in there, and there's some other kind of lots of great sort of pop tracks as well. So she's got quite a good mix in there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was probably her most, I guess, popular albums out of them all. I mean, everyone's going to be different, but I definitely preferred her old stuff. for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
think so too, because
when
it's
the
kind of,
newer one came out, Janet, I wasn't
yeah.
so fond of that one. I have to say, Rhythm Nation is probably my favourite one out of all that.
I think yeah, because it's the era. I think it's set in as well. It's this kind of fusion of what obviously Michael Jackson was kind of doing, and also what Madonna was doing at the time. But I think interestingly, the way that the album's put together and the kind of style of all the backing tracks and the production, it feels like Michael Jackson almost followed Janet Jackson slightly when he did Dangerous. There's quite a few. There's kind of similar
Tom,
production.
Tom,
Yeah, yeah. Hello.
Tom,
Yeah.
Tom. Hang on, stop. I lost you. The connection went.
Oh, okay. I think yeah, we might be losing connection slightly.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Um, so my next choice will be Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation album, and I also think this is one of your favourite albums, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've recently rediscovered this one and just remembered how good it is.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's one where I don't think she's done any albums really like it. It basically discusses her thoughts on social problems and social issues, like the education system and so many things. And it's so iconic for that, the music videos that came out because she basically, her and her ex-husband made a feature-length film out of the whole album. So there's songs included like Black Cat, Miss You Much, Rhythm Nation, and a few others. But the one that's the most famous and iconic is definitely that Rhythm Nation choreography, the music video for that, which is also in the film because it's basically from that really. So, but yeah, it's one of those interesting albums. I kind of wish she sort of did more of that stuff really later on. I wasn't such a big fan of her album Janet afterwards that came out a few years later. But what do you want to say about that? Because that's also one of your albums, and we were talking about this prior to recording. So why is it one of your favourite ones as well?
I just think it was quite ahead of its time in just the way it was produced and all the just the style of production. I think even if you listen to Rhythm Nation, it comes a year or two before Michael Jackson did Dangerous, and there's a lot in
Mm.
Dangerous that sounds similar to Rhythm Nation. So she was kind of launching herself, and this was like the big kind of platform album. You kind of got in
Yeah, because
there.
that made her huge, didn't it?
It
That
did, yeah.
album.
I mean, this was kind of, she was almost stylistically a little bit ahead of Michael at that stage because he then had
Yeah,
to adapt from what he'd done in Bad into what he did in Dangerous. And I think he took some of the style of what Janet was doing as well. And she was kind of fusing
I,
what he had done with
yeah.
Madonna at the time and kind of getting
I've
her
got
own
an
sound.
interesting fact about that because it was originally his idea to do um, a music video, an album, especially the music video where it's all kind of military based, and especially the
Yeah,
dancing and choreography, which you can kind of tell it looks a bit kind of military style, and obviously the costumes as well. So that was originally going to be his idea, but then she liked it so much that he said, "Okay, we almost decided, look, you can have it." So actually, it was
yeah.
originally going to be his idea, and he was going to go for it, but she liked it so much that he gave it to her. So yeah, he was actually the original, inspiration for that concept. And then obviously, like you said, in Dangerous, I mean, especially when he did the MTV Dangerous performance, which was a mixture of his other songs, but the closing finale was that amazing dance that he did. There's definitely a lot of similarities between the kind of choreography and that as well, and a bit of Rhythm Nation. And also, it's interesting because he used sort of extracts of her album as well. Like, you know, like there's a bit that says "Get the point," good, let's dance, and that goes on to his next bit of the choreography.
Yeah,
So yeah, they were very clever like that. But it is an interesting album, like I said, because it talks about, you know, social issues at the time. So I don't know. Is there anything you want to say about that? You were talking about the production and before we were recording.
yeah.
So why don't you tell the listeners a bit about that?
Well, I think it was a good mix. So there was a few tracks were kind of a little bit of social commentary, but then they had a few sort of poppy tracks as well. So it was a nice mixture, really. And I think, yeah, just very,
Mm.
very well produced overall. So I think,
And
they were putting a lot of
sorry.
money into it. She was working with very good studio producers. Maybe what a reason why some of her later albums aren't quite as good as maybe she ventures off and does more of her own thing. And I know obviously she still remained popular, and some of her kind of her late 90s, early 2000s stuff was very popular as well. But it wasn't quite as interesting to me as certainly this album.
And it's quite, I mean, there's a few songs that are very different to the style she would normally have done. Like, if you listen to Black Cat, that's got a kind of an edgy, not heavy metal, but, you know, it's very much kind of like, song.
Yeah.
Which she hasn't done since, really. And so that was a very interesting one that sort of came up from that album. But I know that a lot of those, you know, dance routines took her and the dancers quite a long while to put together because they're all so intricate, especially the Rhythm Nation dance. I mean, I'd imagine once you learnt that would never go away. You know, that would always be in your memory, in your body memory. So, yeah, for sure. But that's the most iconic video, I think, that came out of that time, and definitely that, you know, film and album for sure. Anything else you want to say about Rhythm Nation? Oh, I remember I was obsessed with that album when I was about 11 or 12 because my best friend bought it. I was like, I gotta have it, I gotta have it. And I used to listen to it all the time. So, yeah, I thought I'd drop that in. But when did you first listen to it? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember
That would
exactly,
have been
but
90s.
years ago. But I mean, more recently, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I found the CD in a charity shop. So that's, and I've still got a CD player in my car, so that went straight in. It's just one of those. I'd never I kind of lost touch with Janet Jackson's music to an extent because like you said, it wasn't quite as interesting maybe when she was doing stuff in the beginning of this century. So I kind of lost touch a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, listening back to the album and a few of the tracks, remembering them, it's just really kind of stood out to me how good it was.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to say about that? I think we're pretty much.
No, I think we've covered that one.
Yeah? All right, so let's go on to one of your choices.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go for something from Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you going to go for?
This is a difficult decision, I think.
God, thank you.
Yes, I think I'm kind of torn right exactly between Thriller and Bad. So, they're both really kind of iconic, obviously. Thriller was the one that really kind of broke him out. And they're essentially two kind of perfect albums. So it's quite difficult for me to choose between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my next choice will be Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation album. And I also think this is one of your favourite albums, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've recently rediscovered this one and just remembered how good it is.
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's one where I don't think she's done any albums really like it. It basically discusses her thoughts on social problems and social issues, like the education system, and so many things. And it's so iconic for that, the music videos that came out because she basically, her and her ex-husband made a feature-length film out of the whole album. So there's songs included like Black Cat, Miss You Much, Rhythm Nation, and a few others. But the one that's the most famous and iconic is definitely that Rhythm Nation choreography, the music video for that, which is also in the film because it's basically from that really. So, but yeah, it's one of those interesting albums. I kind of wish she sort of did more of that stuff really later on. I wasn't such a big fan of her album Janet afterwards that came out a few years later. But what do you want to say about that? Because that's also one of your albums. And we were talking about this prior to recording. So why is it one of your favourite ones as well?
I just think it was quite ahead of its time in just the way it was produced and all the just the style of production. I think even if you listen to Rhythm Nation, it comes a year or two before Michael Jackson did Dangerous, and there's a lot in Dangerous that sounds similar to Rhythm Nation. So she was kind of launching herself, and this was like the big kind of platform album. You kind of got in there.
Because that made her huge, didn't it? That
did,
album.
yeah. I mean, this was kind of, she was almost stylistically a little bit ahead of Michael at that stage, because he then had to adapt from what he'd done in Bad into what he did in Dangerous, and I think he took some of the style of what Janet was doing as well, and she was kind of fusing what he had done with Madonna at the time, and kind of getting her own sound.
I've got an interesting fact about that, because it was originally his idea to do a music video, an album, especially the music video where it's all kind of military based, and especially the dancing and choreography, which you can kind of tell it looks a bit kind of military style, and obviously the costumes as well. So that was originally going to be his idea, but then she liked it so much that he said, "Okay, well, you're my sister. I love it. You can have it." So actually, it was originally going to be his idea, and he was going to go for it. But she liked it so much that he gave it to her. So yeah, he was actually the original inspiration for that concept. And then obviously, like you said, in Dangerous, I mean, especially when he did the MTV Dangerous performance, which was a mixture of his other songs, but the closing finale was that amazing dance that he did. There's definitely a lot of similarities between the kind of choreography and that as well, and a bit of Rhythm Nation. And also it's interesting because he used sort of extracts of her album as well, like like there's a bit that says "Get the point, good, let's dance," and that goes on to his next bit of the choreography. So yeah, they were very clever like that. But it is an interesting album, like I said, because it talks about social issues at the time. So I don't know. Is there anything you want to say about that? You were talking about the production and before we were recording. So why don't you tell the listeners a bit about that?
Well, I think it was a good mix. So there was a few tracks kind of a little bit of social commentary, but then they had a few sort of poppy tracks as well. So it was a nice mixture, really. And I think, just very, very well produced overall. So I think,
and
they were putting a lot of money into it. She was working with very good studio producers. Maybe what a reason why some of her later albums aren't quite as good as maybe she ventures off and does more of her own thing. And I know obviously she still remained popular, and some of her kind of her late 90s, early 2000s stuff was very popular as well. But it wasn't quite as interesting to me as certainly this album.
And it's quite, I mean, there's a few songs that are very different to the style she would normally have done. Like, if you listen to Black Cat, that's got a kind of an edgy, not heavy metal, but it's very much kind of like song.
Yeah.
Which she hasn't done since, really. And so that was a very interesting one that sort of came up from that album. But I know that a lot of those, dance routines took her and the dancers quite a long while to put together because they're all so intricate, especially the Rhythm Nation dance. I mean, I'd imagine once you learn that would never go away. That would always be in your memory, in your body memory. So, yeah, for sure. But that's the most iconic video, I think, that came out of that time, and definitely that, film and album for sure. Anything else you want to say about Rhythm Nation? Oh, I remember I was obsessed with that album when I was about 11 or 12 because my best friend bought it. I got to have it. And I used to listen to it all the time. So, I thought I'd drop that in. But when did you first listen to it? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember exactly, but
90s.
Years ago. But I mean, more recently, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I found the CD in a charity shop. So, that's... and I've still got a CD player in my car, so that went straight in. It's just one of those. I'd never I kind of lost touch with Janet Jackson's music to an extent because, like you said, it wasn't quite as interesting maybe when she was doing stuff in the beginning of this century. So I kind of lost touch a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, listening back to the album and a few of the tracks, remembering them, it's just really kind of stood out to me how good it was.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to say about that? I think we pretty much...
No, I think we covered that one.
Yeah? Alright, so let's go on to one of your choices.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think Thriller was probably the first one of the albums he did. He'd done a few
from
before
Michael
then,
Jackson,
where he really moved away from the Jackson 5 sound.
What are you going to go for?
So I think,
this is a difficult decision.
Thriller for me just edges it over Bad.
What's interesting is actually, because you're talking about the both those albums, Thriller and Bad, is there's a really interesting documentary on YouTube where this psychiatrist or psychologist goes into the minds of famous people. So he did one episode is Freddie Mercury, and the second one is Michael Jackson. You should watch it afterwards, and they literally talk about the transition between those two albums, because on the Thriller album he's very much dark skinned, and on the Bad cover that was very shocking for people, wasn't it, because that's when his skin color really changed, and that's a clear indication between both of them that he was having an identity crisis. So you can kind of definitely tell the mood change in both those albums. Does that make sense? Like
definite. And there was a definite kind of, I guess there was even an edgier style in Bad as well.
Yeah, he's kind of, it almost feels like in Bad, well, especially that video and that outfit of, that he's wearing, that's very much a kind of, it's kind of like he's trying to do what is not expected of him. So, he was so basically, when he was in a Jackson 5, I mean, we all know about, his father was basically their manager, and, he beat them and was horrendous to them. So he was very much under their, or his management, under a strict regime. And I guess even though Thriller was away from all of that, he still kind of felt like, I think he was still kind of tied in some ways to the Jackson 5, like he expected to do 1 or 2 concerts as a favor, really, but they did say, the producers, Quincy Jones or whatever, that you could still tell there was a real, there was a thing going on between them. He still felt like he hadn't stepped away from that scene, do you know what I mean? Which he was trying really hard to. So Bad is very much a kind of an album where he's kind of trying really, really hard to not be what was expected of him and do his own thing. Do you know what I mean? Stand out on his own terms.
Yeah. No, you can definitely see that. Obviously, he had very kind of big struggles in kind of finding his identity.
So
it was just a very odd transition as well, because he obviously became noticeably more kind of feminine as well in his appearance.
Well, he changed a lot. He'd had cosmetic surgery, but never admitted to it. So but when both albums were just as good as each other, really, in their own, right. I mean, which one did the most? Which one got the most? I can't talk properly. Which one was the most well bought album, if that makes sense? Which one made the most?
Thriller. By far, yeah. I mean, that is still one of the highest selling albums of all time. Yeah,
I think that's what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
My words have escaped me.
It had, probably the most hits within it. And then it just did enormous numbers of that on album sales.
Yeah.
It was just massive. I mean, Bad still did well, very, very well indeed, but it was almost considered, slightly disappointing in comparison.
You reckon?
I mean, people loved the album, and it still sold a huge amount. But it was just, obviously, Thriller set this bar.
Yeah.
And it couldn't reach it.
Definitely.
And then, more so, once he got to Dangerous, he had that kind of even more.
Well, I think he could tell that he was kind of really struggling then. Do you know what I mean? To sort of stay, number one, basically.
Yeah, stay relevant. And then obviously a few years after that, that's when you started getting the court cases and things like that.
Yeah,
so that kind of, his album sales after that never quite matched up.
No.
But then the albums didn't quite match up either. I think you almost run out of inspiration, maybe, or the people he was writing with maybe weren't quite as good as they used to be.
Yeah, definitely. All right then. Should we go on to one more of mine, and then we'll do like an honourable mentions, and then we'll finish.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I tell you what, because I've written so many here. Right. So if I go through the ones that we haven't mentioned, and you can tell me which ones to talk about. I think that's better, because I can't decide. There's two really good ones. So on the list.
Okay, I'll do the same after then. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just pretend I haven't said them, and I'll say the rest of them in the honourable mentions with yours. All right. So on my list is Lenny Kravitz's greatest hits, Red Hot Chili Peppers' greatest hits, Duran Duran's greatest hits, The Police greatest hits, Moulin Rouge soundtrack, Moby Play album, Apollo 13 soundtrack, Songs in the Minor, Alicia Keys, Rocksteady, No Doubt, Girl, Pharrell Williams, Whoa, Nelly Furtado, Future Sex / Love Sounds, Justin Timberlake, Celebration, Madonna, and the Breakfast Club soundtrack. What one should I talk about?
Oh wow, that's a good list.
Yeah, I don't know. To help me.
I'm gonna say, should we talk about one of your husbands first on the list that you mentioned?
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny, yeah.
Yeah, all right then. So I should mention I have a few husbands.
Yeah.
But my number one husband is Keanu Reeves. So actually, Keanu Reeves, he was the bassist for Dogstar, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He's done a little bit of music over the years, hasn't he?
Yeah. He was actually he was the founder of that band. So because he likes to play the bass guitar. So my number one husband is Keanu, and my number two music one is Lenny Kravitz. So all right, Lenny Kravitz, greatest hits. He's just perfect, Tom. I can't say anything else about him. He's just perfect. And you know what? He's one of those artists that he's very good in changing his style. He can be rock. He can be ballads. He can be anything he wants to be. He's a variety. You know, he doesn't like to stick to one thing. He likes to do a bit of this and he likes to do a bit of that. So and there's so many good songs on that greatest hits album, you know, because he's had so many good songs over the years. There's the one everyone knows, "Are You Going My Way," which is a very kind of Jimi Hendrix vibe going onto it, isn't it? Especially that music.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Very much a Jimi Hendrix kind of, you know, guitar and head banging, especially the video. I just, you know, American Woman. I'm going to look up the other songs because it's been a while, but hang on. Let me mention what they are. Hang on. Greatest hits, right? I'll tell everyone what the hits are. So, "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" "Rock and Roll Is Dead." Hang on a second. "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" "Fly Away." "Rock and Roll Is Dead." Again. "It Ain't Over Till It's Over." "Can't Get You Off My Mind." "Mr. Cab Driver." "American Woman." "Stand By My Woman." "Always on the Run." "Heaven Help." "I Belong to You." "Believe." "Let Love Rule." "Black Velveteen." Did you have that album?
I did have I had that one, and I also had the "Are You Gonna Go My Way" album as well.
Yeah. I mean, the ones that always stood out the most for me are definitely "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" "I Belong to You." I love that song. That's very famously the song that he wrote for Lisa Bonet. Bonet? Isn't it?
Yeah,
When they were together.
Lisa Bonet, yeah.
Bonet? Is that how you say name? "Mr. Cab Driver," I like. "American Woman." "American Woman" is not a very positive song about American women, is it? Women. It sounds like it is with the, you know, the melody, but actually it's not a very good portrayal of what they're like, is it?
No, not particularly, no. I can't remember the...
Well, he's
lyrics.
saying, "American woman, stay away from me."
Yeah.
Basically, you know. So yeah, but that's an interesting song. "Always on the Run," "Fly Away." That's very much a kind of still "Why You Gonna Go My Way" vibe to it. He's just very eclectic. He does a bit of everything, really. So it's hard to explain why he's so perfect. And I would really love to see him live because I'd imagine he's just as good live as he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does do good live shows.
Yeah, I'd really like to see him. I think my mum and stepdad saw him. I can't remember, and I was really jealous because I really want to see him live. I mean, he's going to be 50 something now. He's well into his 50s, but he's still going really strong, and he still looks really young. Do you know? So he's got really good genes, and he's really good looking, Tom. So I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna bash him at all. But yeah. So, and he does his own stuff. Like I remember when he was doing the Hunger Games, because he's kind of gone into the acting world as well. He wrote the whole album when he was doing that film. He stayed up for 2 weeks straight while he was filming. Hunger and album. Hang on, I'm gonna look it up because I don't want to. Can't remember the name of the album. It was the album that had the song "Strut" on it. Do you remember that song? Dun, 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 strut. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sing it myself. Anyway, so I don't know. I can't remember the name of that album, but yeah, he wrote the whole album while he was filming Hunger Games. No, not Hunger Games. What am I talking about? The other one he was in. He was in Hunger Games. The other one I'm talking about. The one where he's the male nurse. What was that film? And it was critically acclaimed. It was heavy. Do you remember?
I should probably know. I've probably seen it.
Oh, hang on, male nurse. What was it? What film was it? Precious. That's it. Precious. He was in Precious.
Oh yeah.
As the male nurse. So I think. Oh no, it wasn't in Precious. What am I talking about? He was in Precious. I think it was when he was filming Hunger Games. Sorry, what am I talking about? So, yeah, it was when he was filming Hunger Games that he wrote the whole album. I just can't remember what one it was, but it was the one that Struck, that single came from, and The Chamber. I wish I knew what it was. Help me out, Tom. Do you know what I'm talking about? No?
No, I'm afraid
No?
you're on your own on this one.
All right, okay. Well, he wrote one of the albums while he was filming Hunger Games, basically, and didn't sleep for 2 weeks. So he stayed up all night to write the album, and then was going in early morning till God knows how long to film his songs for Hunger Games. So there's a little well-known fact for you. Are you a big fan of Lenny Kravitz, Tom?
Yeah, I like Lenny. So I've always been a fan, probably of his kind of earlier stuff.
Definitely.
And, you know, when I was learning guitar, one of the first things I learned to play was "Are You Gonna Go My Way?"
Okay, can you play that song?
I can still play it. Yeah, I can.
Can
Well,
you?
yeah, I can't quite remember. I can always remember just like the opening riff. Yeah. It's quite a simple song, but it's you know, just a really cool kind of riff.
Yeah, it is really. I think that's the one song that everyone probably knows the most out of Lenny Kravitz, isn't it? And probably likes the most. I mean, it's going to be one of those songs that secretly you do in your bedroom and headbang away, or maybe pick up your hairbrush and pretend you're singing it. So, or a bit of the air guitar, maybe. But yeah,
it's definitely an air guitar song. Yeah,
for sure. So yeah, all right then. Let's go on to our honourable mentions, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Tom, give us a list of your honourable mentions.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got Eagle Eye Cherry.
Oh yeah, we talked about him, didn't we? Not on the show, but off air.
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. AC/DC, and probably Highway to Hell or Back in Black.
Okay.
Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time.
Okay.
The Smiths, The Queen is Dead. Tears for Fears, Seeds of Love.
Yeah, that's a really good album.
Yeah. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction.
Yep, I have that album.
George Michael, Listen Without Prejudice. Prodigy, the Prodigy Experience, which is like their first.
What songs came out from that one? It's not a fire song.
Space. What was it called? Space. Outer Space was one of them.
Okay.
And one called Fire, not Firestarter, but there was one called Fire.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like their first kind of breakout album. It was like really kind of, it sounded really kind of undergroundy. Because like Firestarter and Breathe, they're almost more mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
They're the one, because they're the big single hits.
I really like that song that they did that was, I think it was number 1 as well. Not Firestarter, the one that goes, "You're no good for me, I don't need nobody." That one. Don't need.
Yeah.
And it's very much kind of dun 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 dun, and everyone's sort of dancing under, you know, in a sort of grubby garage or somewhere. But yeah, that's the one song that sounds like the most. So that's not on the album, is it?
No. So the first one was like before, you know, Keith became like the kind of front man. Before that, there was no real kind of standout front man, I guess.
Okay.
And he kind of became like this poster boy for the band at some point. Obviously made famous by things like Firestarter with his, you know, the mad hair and things like that. But now, so that one, I'm going to go for a couple of soundtracks here as well.
Okay.
So I've got Queen, Kind of Magic, which was basically it was a proper album, but it was also like a soundtrack album from Highlander. Conan the Barbarian, the soundtrack. Rocky IV soundtrack. Yeah. And Transformers the movie soundtrack.
Okay.
And then I'm going to mention one more because I'm surprised neither of us has mentioned this yet.
What one is it?
Alanis Morissette.
Oh
Jagged
no,
Little
I
Pill.
was going to mention it, but I figured we kind of already covered it in the first
Yeah.
one. But yeah, we can talk about that for sure, because that was going to be on my list. But I thought maybe not, because we already spoke about that. All right, so why that album quickly, Tom? Try not to say what we said.
Because men are shit. No, I think we've
You're right.
we have. I know we've covered it a bit, but yeah, it's just one of those where I think it was so of its time, and it broke out. And then that year, you know, when it came out, it was just Alanis Morissette everywhere, every
And
radio
you can
station.
really identify with those songs, can't you? On some
I guess so, yeah. And I think it, as we've said before, it's one that if I've got on in the car, I'm usually singing along to it quite loud.
with your daughter in the back.
Yeah,
I'd forget.
begging me to stop. Yeah.
And you forget that she's there because you're singing so loud. Poor Lulu.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a kind of is obviously a very personal album.
Oh yeah,
and it's definitely got an edge to it, which I think
about her ex-boyfriend, really, isn't it? So
yeah, there's a lot of songs like that, and it's a good mix of songs as well. So there's some heavier kind of stuff, a bit more aggressive, and then there's some more kind of laid back, kind of I guess almost folky songs. Yeah, a little bit more restrained.
Definitely.
Ballads and things, but yeah, it's a really good album, and I think her second album onward, where she kind of lost that edge a bit, they just weren't as interesting.
It's also, I mean, it's a very angsty album, isn't it? It's the kind of album you listen to if you've had a really bad day, or you're really pissed off with a man, or definitely if you're pissed off with a man, or you're just generally not in a good mood and want to let off steam. It's really good for that, isn't it? Just to sort of kind of pretend like, yeah, like I've had enough, screw you, kind of thing. And sing along really loud in the car like you do.
Well, I think because you've got that video where she's in the car and she's singing.
Oh yeah, ironic.
Yeah. So you're almost thinking of that in your mind, or at least I am when I'm driving. You know, one of the songs is playing.
Yeah, do you know what's funny about that song, Ironic? There was a comedian, I think his name was Ed Burns. His name's Ed Burns. He's still alive, so I shouldn't have said he was. And do you know what I'm getting at?
Was he talking about how she doesn't quite understand the meaning of the word ironic?
Yeah, go. Yeah. All right, take it away. So say why that tell everyone what the irony in that song is.
So I think, you know, like say 10,000 spoons when all you want is a knife. He's like, I'm going to do a really bad Irish accent here because it's Ed Burns. That's not ironic. That's just mildly inconvenient.
Yeah, that's a good accent.
Yeah.
And then what's the lyric about the guy who never went on a plane because he was
afraid to fly?
Yeah.
Packed his suitcase and said goodbye.
And as the plane went down,
you thought, well, isn't this nice?
Yeah. Which isn't funny, but you know, is that ironic? That's just bad luck, isn't it? And that's what he says. It's just all bad luck.
I mean, yeah, there's a little bit, I guess, but you know, I think, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know, that sort of always stands out the most to me. But I always liked that song, and that video was always like being shown.
That was the kind of most iconic video in the album, wasn't it?
It was a bit John Malkovich, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like 5 of her in the car. She's driving, and then she's the one in the passenger seat, and then she's the other two at the back. And it's all kind of different hers, you know.
Yeah.
So, which people have anyway. They have a different perspective of them each time, you know, that they show to people, or when they're by themselves, for instance. So yeah. All right then. So shall I quickly go through mine? I mean, I already have, but we can pretend I haven't because I was trying to get you to help me. So
well,
I'll go.
Yeah, you can remind.
I'll remind everyone.
Yeah.
So remember, everyone, you don't know. I haven't said it before. Oh, it's Lulu.
Ask Lulu what her favourite albums or songs are, Tom.
Oh, it's probably all stuff I've made her listen to.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
she likes AC/DC and she likes Iron Maiden. Um,
Guns N' Roses?
maybe not so much Guns N' Roses, no.
Okay.
But yeah, she does like Iron Maiden and AC/DC.
That's so funny. Most parents wouldn't let their kids listen to that kind of music.
Yeah. That's the devil's music.
All right, so I'll go for mine quickly, even though I've said them, but we don't know that. Hush, hush. So Red Hot Chili Peppers' greatest hits.
Yeah.
Duran Duran greatest hits. I just like because of these greatest hits, they just have all the good songs. That's why I put greatest hits quite a lot. The Police greatest hits as well. I put Moulin Rouge soundtrack, the Moulin Rouge soundtrack. Moby's Play album, and Moby's Play album was an interesting one because that's one that really kind of stands out about 2001, doesn't it? I think everyone had that album, and it was so kind of different for the time. It was always being played, I think. Did you have that album?
I didn't have that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just being played all the time.
It was iconic, wasn't it? And it was probably the one that kind of set him into infamous stardom. I mean, he was always, a musician doing stuff, but that was the one that was making, kind of the beginning of his fame per se, for instance, when he really went big. So Moby's Play album will always have a big spot in my heart. I put Apollo 13 soundtrack. Most of that music is composed by James Horner, but you have music by that are relevant to the time. So there's James Brown and other songs from that era. I can't remember, but they are. You can look them up on YouTube. I'm too lazy. And also Annie Lennox does a lot of the sort of harmonizing. So in sort of the James Horner music, she's doing the vocals. She's not singing lyrics, but you can tell that's her. Definitely her voice. Songs in a Minor, which was Alicia Keys' debut album. I remember having that album. Or my sister had that album, and that was when she first came out. I mean, that album was amazing. Do you have that album?
I think I might have done. Yeah.
She was the same age as me, and she would have been a little bit older than you because you're 82 or you're 81.
81, yeah.
81,
I feel like I'm actually 81. Not
I know, I do as well sometimes. Rocksteady, no doubt.
Yeah.
That was another album I had, my sister had when I was my own.
I'm going to say that Gwen is one of my wives.
Oh, is she? Yeah, I kind of figured she would be.
I'm just, I just thought of that now, really. So.
Well, Lenny Kravitz is mine, so we can let you off with that one.
Yeah.
Girl, Pharrell Williams. So the songs like Marilyn Monroe and Happy. Oh my God, Happy. I played that song so many times, and that was when I sort of broke up with an ex-boyfriend, and it went really pear-shaped, and I was just absolutely crushed and heartbroken. So I made myself listen to that song over and over and over again, just to try cheer myself up. It actually kind of helped, So that's kind of like my medicine music, really, if I feel crap or low. Do you remember that song, Tom? It was everywhere.
I do, yeah, because it was played like non-stop for maybe 2 or 3 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I can't listen to it anymore because it drives me crazy. Because it was just played way too much, like you said. Future, Sex, Love Sounds, Justin Timberlake. Celebration, Madonna. So that's like basically all our greatest hits. And the Breakfast Club soundtrack. Anything you want to say about any of those?
Well, I definitely love the Breakfast Club soundtrack. That's a kind of classic one, isn't it?
Okay, can we pick that as both of ours, because I really want to talk about that too, but I didn't know what exactly to say about it. So that can be both of ours then.
we'll quickly
Yeah,
slip
okay.
in. So why The Breakfast Club, Tom? Why does that stand out for us? Why is that one of our favourite soundtracks? Because one, that film's
Well,
amazing.
yeah, the film's amazing. It's also made in the 80s where music was just amazing.
Yeah.
And then you've got that classic song.
Dun, dun, hey,
Anytime you hear
hey,
that, you have to kind of join in, don't you? You have to go, hey, hey, hey.
We talked about this in Film
Yeah.
Lovers when we did our John Hughes special, didn't we?
Yeah, I can't hear it without kind of, even quietly to myself doing that.
And the opening of that song is just so, it's like a big kind of like crescendo of an opera, it's just like boom. Yeah. It's such a good way to start a film as well. It really kind of gets you in the mood. What else can you say about The Breakfast Club? Why is that such a good soundtrack, not film? Because we talk about Film and Film Lovers.
I think because John Hughes was always really good at picking soundtracks. I think they spoke about the time and they always had a good energy. So he always quite liked to have things that were energetic and uplifting. And sometimes there would be a few more melancholic things in there that would kind of tell a story as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tom, you cut out a bit. Can you say that again?
It's just that the songs are kind of really interesting. There's a bit of a good mix in there, so very poppy stuff, very uplifting and energetic. So I think John Hughes films were always really good at that, picking some like really interesting songs.
Definitely. And the songs are very different, aren't they? Like,
yeah,
there's not a kind of a theme to them. They're all good in their own way, really. So yeah, and there's some I don't really know what happened to them afterwards, but there's some just amazing songs on there. It's just hard to pick out which ones are the best, really, because they're all really good in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a song in there by Wang Chung, and I've always really kind of liked them as a band.
Which one is that one? I'll sing it.
There's one called, I can't remember the song actually, but it's called Fire in the Twilight by Wang Chung.
How's it go?
I can't remember that song. But they had a couple of soundtracks in the 80s, or a couple of songs that were kind of on soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like Danceful Days was in might have been another Hughes film actually.
I remember the song that always kind of stands out to me is Waiting.
Yeah.
You know that one? Dun, 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 dun. No? Yes, listen to it afterwards.
Yeah. I'll listen to the whole soundtrack and watch the film.
The whole soundtrack. Yeah. And the bit where they're all dancing in the library.
Yeah. But I think I love, Ferris Bueller soundtrack as well.
Yeah. That can be one of our honourable mentions.
Yeah, Pretty in Pink as well. That was a good soundtrack.
Yeah. 16 Candles.
Yeah, they definitely had a few good songs in that one as well.
All the John Hughes ones.
Basically anything John Hughes, in the 80s.
But then, like you said, we're allowed to talk about him because he picked out all the music. So we'll let him off. For music lovers. All right. Anything else you want to say about the Breakfast Club soundtrack?
No, it's just iconic.
Exactly. You can't not say anything else about it. Really, it just stands. It's a bit like West Side Story. It's always going to be up there. Do you know what I mean? It's always going to be part of popular culture. Really.
Yeah, for definite. Yeah.
There'll always be someone who has a copy or who knows it. So, but I'm sure that album must have been played over and over again in the 80s when it came out. When it came out at the same time as the film, for sure. But yeah, and it's also it gives very much the vibe of being a teenager, doesn't it? Like that film.
Yeah, they're very poppy songs as well, aren't they? So
yeah.
It
kind of makes me think I wish I was a teenager in the 80s, because that would have been a really good time to be a rebel in a way. Do you know what I mean? With all the funky hair and not the shoulder pads. That wouldn't have been a good look for me.
and not the
I
perm
don't know. I
either.
think you could pull it off. Yeah.
And you could do like the Don Johnson look in Miami Vice with the no socks and the trousers rolled. The terrible suits that are like white with, you know, a blue t-shirt underneath or something like
Yeah.
that. Ah, the good old days.
Yeah, those were the days.
All right. Yeah. All right then, Tom. Anything else you want to say or drop in and we'll finish?
Okay, I'll just drop one last one in quickly with Another Wife.
Go on then, quick. Bjork. Yeah. What one? Her
And
debut?
Homogenic.
Oh, okay. Why that
So
one?
this is, I think it's probably, I mean, I loved her debut album, which was called Debut, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Homogenic's got some of my favourite ones in there.
Okay.
Like Unravel is one of my favourite songs, and that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why that album?
So she had that kind of dancey period, and then this one is a little bit more. There's a lot of strings in this one that she uses in it, and she's obviously experimenting. As she always has, but this is quite a really kind of eclectic album.
She's very alternative for sure, isn't she?
Yeah.
I mean, she's been very experimental with her music, and you can definitely.
Yeah, and there's a few really great tracks in this one as well. Yeah, no, it's probably my favourite of hers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I thought I'd have to mention one of my wives there.
Of course you do. And Gwen Stefani.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you said something, but you cut out. I was like, has he said something, but it's cut out? All right, then. I think that's a good place to finish up then. So it's goodbye from me.
Yep, and it's goodbye from me.
All right.
With the two Ronnies all of a sudden.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.